Why in our bed? I finally asked, still looking at Anna. Because of the force, James responded. In our bed? I interrupted, noticing that James wasn't addressing me directly. He turned to Anna, and I echoed, in our bed. I glanced at my wife, but she remained silent. My chest tightened, and my heart began to race. I stood abruptly and walked out the door. Once outside, I quickly found a secluded corner, desperate for privacy. Curling into a ball, I tried to suppress my emotions, digging my nails into my palms in a futile attempt to stave off the feelings of pain, resentment, and betrayal. Though I mostly held back the sobs, a few moans escaped my lips. Still struggling to control my emotions, I suddenly felt someone's hand on me, followed by arms wrapping around me. Amazing, I thought sarcastically. Now I had a midfielder trying to comfort me. As those arms tightened around me, I realized something: he smelled a lot better than before. And then it hit me, he also felt better than before. I kept my eyes clenched shut, trying to contain the tears, but the shivers came nonetheless. Then I felt the midfielder's cheek press against mine, and in shock, I pulled back and opened my eyes. It wasn't the midfielder. It was my wife's angelic face gazing at me. Why in our bed? I repeated, but Anna still had no response. By now, I had likely forfeited $4 million just by walking out of that conference room, so I wondered, did it even matter? Anna pleaded, I know I hurt you, but it wasn't my idea. I just stared at her, unmoved. He forced me to date him, to give myself to him. He made me take pictures. I know I betrayed your trust. Please, Roy. Please, I need you. If I had told you earlier, he would have fired you, and we would have lost everything. We did lose everything, I replied coldly. You were the reason I worked so hard. All those things you wanted, I had to work for them. But after I left, I realized none of it mattered. Only you did. Anna gave me a quick kiss on the lips and asked, is there somewhere we can go? Reluctantly, I agreed, knowing what could happen if I took her to my apartment. It was still early, so I said, okay, come with me. I took her to the original Albuquerque Max Steak in the Rough. It's just a diner, but it serves some of the most delicious dishes they call rough. I ordered one for each of us, and after we got our food, we sat down. I opened my box and pulled out a roughie, showing Anna how to eat it. She must have been really hungry or just intrigued, as she finished hers before I did. I started the conversation with the most pressing question on my mind. Why didn't you come to me when Johnson started pressuring you, Anna? He said he'd fire you and destroy your reputation if I did, she responded desperately. I wanted to tell you, God knows how much I wanted to. I hated being with him. I hated him touching me. But I thought I had to save our future. Save it by ruining it, really, Anna? What the hell were you thinking? I was thinking about you, about loving you, and making sure we stayed together, she said, her voice trembling. How does sex prove your love for me, Anna? How does it keep us together? I asked, my tone full of disbelief. I mean, that's why I said I didn't want to go beyond role-playing. I liked role-playing, but I died inside when I saw his car in our driveway. I lowered my gaze, feeling the sting in my chest. It ripped my heart out, Anna. I didn't want her to stay with me, so I drove her back to the motel. But when we got there, she wouldn't let me leave. She led me to a table in the lobby, where I noticed both her lawyer and mine sitting at the next table. Apparently, they were staying at the motel too. We ordered drinks, bourbon and Coke for me, red wine for her, and sat down to talk. One drink turned into two, and two into three. Time flew, and I was stunned to realize we had spent almost 5 hours talking, even though we were on the brink of divorce. I wanted to leave, but I had too much to drink to drive. Anna took my hand, brought it to her lips, and kissed my knuckles. I pressed my palm against her cheek, then pulled her face toward mine and did something I never thought I'd do again. I kissed her. Her soft lips, her scent, it all rushed back to me, confirming what I had been denying for months. I was still in love with her. As we kissed, I looked into her eyes, which usually sparkled with excitement and vitality. But now they were full of sadness and regret. They told me she hated what Johnson had done to her, to us. After a while, I thought about calling a cab, but Anna must have sensed I was about to leave. She stood up, took my hand, and led me silently to the elevator. Once inside, she pressed the button for the 4th floor. As we reached the floor, she continued kissing me as she led me to room 414. Pressing her against the door, I kissed her deeply as she fumbled with her purse to find the key card. The moment the lock clicked open, I lifted her off the floor, carried her inside, and pinned her against the wall. Even as we kissed, I felt my anger bubbling up, but I didn't know what I was truly angry about. Sure, I wanted to kick Johnson's ass, but he wasn't here, just me and my ex-wife. Out of breath from everything, I collapsed onto my back. Tears streamed down my face as I stared at the ceiling, overwhelmed with conflicting emotions. I wanted to hate this woman I was holding, but I couldn't. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't hate her. I had accepted the legal statements that it wasn't her fault, but it was her fault, because she hadn't come to me. She hadn't told me about the blackmail. I had always been there for her, always on her side. Why didn't she trust me? I needed to know. The thought gnawed at me. Why didn't you come to me? I asked quietly. I couldn't. He said he'd ruin you, first fire you, then destroy your reputation so badly you'd never work again, she whispered. And you believed him? I asked. I did, she answered softly. A knock on the door broke the silence. I quickly grabbed my pants and pulled them on before going to answer it. After glancing through the peephole, I saw our lawyer standing outside in the hallway. I mentioned this to Anna and suggested she get dressed. She hurriedly ran into the bathroom, forgetting that her clothes were still scattered across the room. Just a minute, I called out, already putting on my shirt and pulling on my pants while buttoning them. I opened the door, greeted with a smile from Anna's lawyer. Nice to see you again, she said as I stepped back to invite her inside. My lawyer followed, and after quickly scanning the hallway to make sure no one was around, I shut the door. The room had a table with 2 chairs, where I invited the 2 attorneys, Mrs. Patterson and Mr. Blake, to sit. Mrs. Patterson pointed at Anna's dress on the bed and asked, "Will she be needing that?" I quickly grabbed the dress and headed to the bathroom. I opened the door slightly and slid the dress through the narrow gap. "Our lawyers are here, baby," I told her. "Okay, I'll be right out," she responded. I sat down on the bed, looking expectantly at the lawyers. "All right, what's the issue?" I asked. Mrs. Patterson gave a knowing smile before replying, "I guess now you understand why I couldn't take your case." I really had no clue, and my confused expression must have encouraged her to explain further. "I'm a contract worker," she began, "and I represent clients referred to me by Mr. Johnson." Upon hearing this, my first instinct was to throw her out of the room. But then I remembered that she was the one who had referred me to the lawyer who had managed to drain Johnson of his fees, a hefty $10 million. I looked at her and asked, "Why did you refer me to Mr. Blake if you could have just told me to move on with my life?" Her smile grew wider. "There are few people I dislike in this world, even fewer I despise, and only one person I hate. That man kept me safe, but he's a hateful bastard," she said, softening her tone. "You've heard what that piece of garbage did to your wife and to others. I wanted him in jail, but there didn't seem to be a way. Then you showed up with that folder of information, and I knew I had him." She gestured toward Mr. Blake, who added, "If the wrong person finds out what Mrs. Patterson did, she'll be disbarred, so it has to remain a secret, Roy." I nodded in agreement just as Anna came out of the bathroom, now dressed. "Hi Sarah," she greeted her lawyer. Sarah Patterson stood up and hugged Anna. "Feeling better?" she asked. Anna nodded enthusiastically. I turned to my lawyer. "We really did a number on him, didn't we?" I said with a laugh. "Better than good," he replied, pulling out an envelope and handing it to me. I opened it to find a cashier's check for $4 million, the total amount from the settlement. Confused, I asked, "Weren't you supposed to get half?" Mr. Blake smiled and said, "You didn't listen to Mrs. Day. She told you he covered all the legal fees." Sarah Patterson then asked, "Have you figured out what you're going to do with all that money?" I just shook my head, still staring at the check. Anna jokingly chimed in, "I can help you make that decision if you'd like." I turned to my lawyer again and asked, "What about the divorce? How's that coming along?" He scratched his head in mock embarrassment. Damn it. I completely forgot to file that petition. How could I be so careless? Sarah laughed, and I heard Anna giggle softly. I seemed to be the only one not in on the joke. Then Mr. Blake said, "Looks like you'll have to file for divorce in New Mexico, now that you're settled here." I didn't think he was avoiding the job, but it made sense. Sarah Patterson then added, "When you came to my office in tears, asking for help filing for divorce, I realized how deeply in love you still were with Anna. So, I took it upon myself to thwart the divorce. When I saw the picture of Mr. Johnson, the man she had cheated with, I knew I had to act. I compromised my professional ethics, risking my license to see you two reunited." As I listened to her, I could tell she was being sincere. I studied her face for a moment before asking, "Do you remember Eric Mentor?" Her eyes immediately welled up with tears. She remembered him all too well. "That divorce nearly destroyed him," I said. She nodded, whispering, "I know." After a pause, she clarified, "That's the man James told you about. He did the same thing to him as he did to you." It was clear she deeply empathized with others' suffering. I couldn't imagine how long she could continue as a lawyer with such a sensitive heart. Finally, she stood up, hugged Mr. Blake, and the two of them left. Anna looked stunning in her dress, even without any underwear beneath. It was quite some time before we finally left the room. In fact, it was already lunchtime the next day. After checking out, I took Anna to my apartment and showed her around. She laughed when she saw that my bed was in the living room, smiling as she remarked that it reassured her I hadn't been seeing anyone else. It may sound like a cliché, but real men forgive. Of course, forgiveness doesn't always mean reconciliation, but I realized I couldn't live without her. Many would probably criticize my decision to take Anna back, but those people might not have been as deeply in love as I was with her. Pragmatically speaking, I had invested 6 years of my life, love, and heart into this woman, and I wasn't ready to throw it all away. Ultimately, I couldn't call myself a man if I couldn't forgive her. Epilogue. I glanced down at my 3-year-old son, who was sitting in his stroller beside me, as I turned my Harley into the parking lot of Mac's Steak in the Rough. My wife pulled up next to me in her new Lexus. My son smiled broadly as I lifted him out of his stroller and set him down on the ground. "Daddy, Daddy," my 2-year-old daughter called out as Anna unbuckled her from her car seat. She ran straight into my arms. She's definitely a daddy's girl, but I never complain. I carried my daughter into the restaurant, with Anna guiding our son inside. As my family gathered around me, I felt like life was truly complete. I kissed my wife with all the love and gratitude I could muster. Anna had gained a few pounds after 2 pregnancies, and her breasts sagged slightly from breastfeeding the kids, sometimes even me, but I didn't mind. We had a wonderful dinner, full of laughter and light-hearted conversation. In fact, ever since we reconciled, Anna and I have been laughing together more than ever. Our relationship was thriving, and things only improved with the arrival of the kids. It was the kind of family life I had always dreamed of. My career was booming, allowing me to earn far more than I ever did while working for Johnson. For now, Anna stays at home with the kids, but she plans to start volunteering at the hospital once our daughter Chelsea begins school. Believe it or not, James Johnson tried his scam again, but this time, the victim didn't just walk away, he left James confined to a wheelchair. The man who took him down is now in jail, and I'm thankful I chose not to confront Johnson when I was so full of anger. I don't miss my old town nearly as much as I thought I would. I've grown fond of Albuquerque and its surrounding areas. We bought a house in Los Lunas, which translates to Lost Moons. It's a great place to raise kids, with a friendly community and plenty of organized activities like Little League Baseball and youth soccer. Having young children does strain a couple's sex life, but Anna and I still make love as often as we can. She's never brought up the idea of role-playing or cheating again, and we continue to have date nights because, despite everything, we are still madly in love with each other.